The Like a Dragon Yakuza franchise, created by Ryuga Gotoku Studio, has slowly become a staple not only for Japanese gamers, but worldwide as more people discover the wacky, convoluted, heart-wrenching, and brilliant journey that Kazuma Kiryu has led throughout the series. Today, I want to go over my thoughts after finishing Yakuza 0 through Yakuza 6 and also give my tips for starting the series, because at first glance it can feel a bit overwhelming. Now, of course, no single video could capture the entire series, and I'm not trying to. This is just a brief overview of my top-level thoughts, and as I said, I'll only be covering what I call the original series, 0 through 6, or what a lot of people call the Kazuma Kiryu saga. I'll avoid direct spoilers, but I am talking about the franchise, so if you want to go in completely blind, this might not be the video for you, because this is a review after all. Also, I'm not going to go in depth on each individual entry, I'm just giving my overall thoughts on the franchise as a whole, and why I think this series should, at the very least, be tried by everyone. I'll admit, it's not for everybody, but I can guarantee there are a lot of people out there who would absolutely fall in love with it. So let's start out easy. What is Like a Dragon Yakuza? Well, the series kicks off in 1988 in Kamurocho, Japan, and you play as Kazuma Kiryu, freshly anointed into the Yakuza and part of the Dojima family, which itself is part of the Tojo clan. For anyone who doesn't know, the Yakuza is roughly the Japanese equivalent of the United States Mafia, but unlike the Mafia, the Yakuza have historically been much more visible and openly recognized in Japan. They control businesses, street movement, land, and most importantly, people. They're not some small-time group, they're an organized criminal empire. Even the police hesitate to interfere sometimes because the Yakuza don't just control things, they also keep a kind of order. In their own messed up way, it's something I personally found fascinating. And after doing some research, a lot of what the games draw from is grounded in real history. The way these groups have existed in Japan and how people have interacted with them adds a layer to the story that I didn't expect going in. So now that you've got the basics set up, what are these games actually like? Well, as you can imagine, things immediately take a turn and you're thrust into a story of conspiracy and betrayal. This is the heart of the Yakuza franchise, and I cannot emphasize this enough. Whatever you think will happen probably isn't what's actually going to happen. That's what part of makes these games so brilliant, and also one of my biggest gripes. It's hard to explain without spoiling anything, but I'll do my best. Think of these games like a soap opera on crack. What do I mean by that? Well, every character will probably at some point betray you, then reveal they were secretly on your side, then betray you again, and then get killed by someone else to protect a conspiracy they're also involved in. Now, that's exaggerated, but that's how the vibe can feel at times. And there are times when it works so well, but as a whole, the series can get really convoluted and confusing at times. I felt like that Always Sunny meme where Charlie's staring at the board with the red lines going everywhere. And I'd say about 80% of the time, the series nails that you don't know what will happen next feeling, and it's one of its greatest strengths, but like I said, every coin has two sides. I felt this especially in the last entry, Yakuza 6, and no spoilers, remember, but there was a point when there was such an over-the-top twist that I literally guessed every aspect of it because I understood how over-the-top this series can be. It basically turned on itself, and that's the point where I felt like one of the series' greatest strengths had kind of betrayed itself. And this wasn't the only time I felt that way across the series. This was just the most recent one, and it sticks out in my head. Now, I want to emphasize, I don't think this makes the series bad at all. I just think if they had slowed down even a little bit in certain spots, it could have made some moments hit even harder. And another thing that can take me out of it sometimes is how interwoven everything gets, where it feels like every single person is connected to every other person in the most insane way possible. Yeah, I get it's a video game, and 100%, but it still kind of takes me out of it sometimes, you know? Let me give you a fake real-world scenario to explain what I mean. Now, this has nothing to do with the games, it's just to show what I'm talking about. So let's say you're adopted and you make friends at school with someone named Mike. One day it's announced that your favorite teacher has been killed by somebody. You hunt down who did it, and it turns out that the person who killed the teacher was your adopted father, who did it to keep the teacher from telling you that the teacher was actually your real father. Oh, and also that guy Mike, I used your brother for some reason. And the teacher was secretly the president of a large corporation that competed with your adoptive father's business. That didn't make any sense, did it? Well, that's how Yakuza can feel sometimes. Now, most of the time it's not that ridiculous, but it's that same kind of energy. Sometimes it's so wild, it just pulls me out. But I've been critiquing the story a lot here, and honestly, that's like 25% of how I feel. The other 75% is that the stories are genuinely heartwarming, intense, and often feel like full-on thrillers. I'd finish a big moment and immediately think, all right, I need to see what happens next. I know it's cheesy, but that's how I felt. Now, living through Kiryu's journey is honestly a joyful experience, and I wasn't expecting the writing to captivate me as much as it did. RGG has this incredible ability to make you absolutely love a character, then hate them, and then somehow love them again, and they do it across a huge cast, which is really, really impressive. And I don't think that gets talked about enough, but the sheer number of characters the series makes you care about. Even when someone is only around for a single game, I still felt a real connection to them, more than I do in most other franchises. I can still remember minor characters from Yakuza 0 who on paper should have been forgettable, but RGG made them endearing and memorable. Even when a character only exists for one arc, the game treats them like a person, not a plot device. What's even more impressive is that as the series goes on, introducing new characters and pushing others to the background, it never felt like the later entries were missing something. The world just kept expanding naturally. There are very few series in gaming that I think have handled a story this long, this messy, and this ambitious with the level of consistency RGG managed. On top of the twists and hype moments, I think the reason Yakuza's story works is that it has a real moral center. Kiryu is the consistent anchor, someone trying to do the right thing in a world that keeps punishing him for it, and the series treats the people around him like real human beings, not plot devices. The emotional payoffs feel earned because you spend real time with these characters. And then there's Kamurocho. By the end, the city feels like a character too, and that sense of place gives the whole saga weight. Because the heart of these games is a man who's genuinely just trying to do his best for his family, and the sacrifices he makes to keep the people he loves safe, it's powerful, it's emotional, and it's filled with some of the most enjoyable, over-the-top, and fun characters I've ever seen in a franchise. And what's really interesting is how easily the creators could have made everyone dull and angry and serious all the time, but instead they made characters that are sometimes goofy but still serious, if that makes sense. The perfect example is Goro Majima. He's arguably my favorite character in the entire series. If you want to understand Yakuza as a franchise, watch a few minutes of him on screen and you'll understand the tone immediately. And that gets me into the real heart of these games, the world. It's difficult to put into words exactly how special it is, but I'll try. Now, I hate this comparison because I don't think it does Yakuza justice, but it helps people picture it. Think Grand Theft Auto, but in Japan. There are a ton of differences, obviously, but you're dropped into this open world where you can visit stores, fight thugs, do mini-games, and get involved in the craziest side missions I've ever seen in a video game. And what makes this open world experience so brilliant is how alive the city feels. Every block has something going on, whether it's a creep stalking someone and you beat him to a pulp, or a guy running from the Yakuza because he owes money. Those are the more tame examples. The game introduces scenarios that you just have to see for yourself. You'll see things in the series that no other game would even consider, and it's a huge part of why I love it. So that leads into the side missions, and this is where the game really shines as its own thing. This is the only place I might have a minor spoiler. I'm going to be giving an example of a side mission, but if you want to go in completely blind, skip a little ahead. So there's a side mission where Kiryu has to train a dominatrix. Yeah, that's a mission in the game, and somehow there's actually a lot of heart in it, but it's still hilarious. Not every mission is that insane, but a lot of them have that same energy. And that's the core of what Yakuza is, and I am so here for it. Now let's move on to the gameplay, and I want to emphasize I could make a 2-hour video on the story in the world of Yakuza, but I make videos that I would watch and I don't think I'd watch that. So this is just a taste. If a full breakdown is something you'd want, let me know in the comments. So the gameplay. The combat is a beat 'em up style that's actually pretty unique. I'd put it in a similar lane as Arkham or Sifu, if you've played those. You're usually surrounded by a few guys and you have to punch your way out using basic punches, kicks, heavy attacks, and heat actions. So, heat actions are the heart of the gameplay, I would say. And once you build a gauge, you can either go into a powered up mode where your attacks hit harder, or you can do a heat action, which is basically a cinematic super attack that matches the over the top world of Yakuza. For example, at one point I picked up a knife and did a heat action where Kiryu stabbed Grunt and then kneed the knife further into the guy's chest. It was brutal, ridiculous, and I'm not gonna lie, I was having the time of my life. It's so fun discovering all the heat actions and combinations. Now, over the course of the series, RGG does change the combat in some minor ways, but the core of it stays the same. Now, I will say that the series tripped a little bit in Yakuza 3 and 4 and a little bit in 5 because the characters, especially bosses, were spongier than SpongeBob SquarePants. They'd go from blocking to knocking you down, back to blocking. Each boss fight would take 20 minutes and I'd have to heal 10 times. It just wasn't fun. And I'm glad they toned that down in 6. And yes, Yakuza 3 has been remastered, so some of that might feel different depending on what version you play. My experience was with the original though. But overall, the series has a really enjoyable combat, especially Yakuza 0, which I think is the most important one to get right since it's the entry point for so many people. So with all that said, that's my brief review of the series. I could go way further, but I really think this is a franchise people should experience as blind as possible, and I don't want to ruin that chance. So let me go through my 3 highs and 3 lows before going into a how to get into the series little guide. So high number 1, the tone balance. No other series, in my opinion, blends serious crime drama with absurd comedy this well without feeling like it's making fun of itself. High number 2, the sense of place. Kamurocho and the recurring locations become iconic because they're dense, detailed, and lived in. High number 3, the cast. Kiryu and the supporting characters carry emotional weight across multiple games, which is rare, especially for a series this long. Now let's go over some lows. Low number 1, plot convolution. When the twists stack too high, it can start feeling like the story is doing gymnastics. Low number 2, entry to entry fatigue. These games are dense. Playing them back to back can blur together and burn you out. This isn't necessarily a negative for the series, but it's just something I wanted to mention. There's not a lot of lows with these games. They're really good. I kind of had to stretch it. Low number 3, Yakuza's combat pacing. Some of these games can feel a bit dated, especially in the boss encounters, so it's just something to keep in mind, mainly the middle entries that haven't been remade yet. Now, none of these ruin the experience, but they're good to know going in. So the question now is, where do you start? Well, that is very easy. Start with Yakuza 0. It's the prequel. It's the cleanest starting point. It explains everything you need to know, and it's the beginning of Kiryu's journey. With RGG remastering and modernizing these games, they feel good to play and are easy to access. If you like crazy stories, engaging gameplay, and you need a new series to sink hundreds of hours into, this is the place to start. And here's a few tips I have for enjoying this franchise to the fullest. Tip number 1, take it slow. These games are story heavy and dense. Do a few chapters, do some side content, then stop for the night. Tip number 2, take breaks between games. Even if you love the series, marathoning 7 big games can make it blur together. A break makes everything hit harder. This is one of my biggest regrets. I played these games so close together that I have a little bit of a hard time remembering some of the more specific details, and I wish I'd taken a breather. Tip number 3, lower the difficulty if you need to. This isn't about proving anything. If combat frustrates you, especially in like 3 or 4, drop the difficulty and enjoy the ride. There are some parts that can feel frankly unfair, but it's a single player game. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. If it will ruin your experience, then lower the difficulty. And then my last tip is try to avoid spoilers. And now this is obvious, but there's a problem with these games and so many characters that if you start looking up the characters, you might see what happens to them. So it's like, you gotta be careful. I made that mistake a couple times where I would look up a character because I couldn't remember who they were and I would get spoiled. Some of the entries do have like an in-game glossary, so make sure to use that because that could be helpful. So with all that said, I hope you took something away from this. Overall, Yakuza has become one of my favorite franchises in gaming. It trips over its own feet at times, but that doesn't stop it from being a stellar experience, and I could not be happier RGG brought these games to the West. So that is it for me. Make sure to leave a comment, and I'll see you in my next video.